So here we are again, another day walking through the woods, and starting off this video, first thing I want to talk about is poetry, specifically my poetry, and how recently I've been doing, trying to do a little bit of edits on the new book, just reading through what I have so far. But every time I sit down to write, it's like I can't get the words out. But I realize I really need like a moment of inspiration to just change everything. And I realize I just need that one breakthrough moment. Like, for example, the band Green Day, they were about to give up on their music, and then they came out with this album called American Idiot, and it transformed their entire career because it told a story and it was very socially conscious. It was kind of like an anthem of people who didn't have a voice at that time. And as I said earlier, there's a large amount of people out today, which makes me afraid to film. And I'm just looking at that sunset. And as I was saying before, yeah, the album American Idiot, it's like Green Day was about to go under, about to give up on music. But then they came up with this album called Cigarettes and Valentines. They recorded it, and apparently the story goes the tapes were stolen or lost, and they had to start over. So then lead singer came up with this idea to tell a story about the disenfranchised people in America at the time. And it was the marriage between lyricism and narrative is what really is powerful about that album. And I'm gonna have to make the decision whether or not to turn around soon. And I was gonna do that Wikipedia article thing, but I forgot the sheet that I was gonna read off of. So I have officially turned around. Let's see how long it takes me to get back to where I started. We really need like a new rock opera for the era of COVID-19, because even though it's a horrible disease, there are politicians, like really wicked guys, that are trying to take advantage of the whole situation and strengthen their control. We've learned this story before. Everyone's seen Star Wars and learned how in the prequel trilogy, the bad guy took advantage of a crisis and then seized power and never let it go. There is a ridiculous amount of uncertainty that the world is facing now and that I'm facing in my life right now. So I'm just trying to figure it out one day at a time, just like the Bible says. Like, don't worry about your life, for even the flowers are clothed in a perfect way, or something like that, to paraphrase. Just gonna walk off into the sunset, continue my journey, continue what I'm doing, work as hard as I can. Hopefully some good results will come. That's what I'm hoping. Like, I have lost so much money with my poetry business, it's ridiculous. But eventually, I don't know, eventually it'll turn into a business, because if you're not making money, you don't have a business. But I'm doing it for the purpose of art. It's like sort of like a religious cause. Like, you don't see churches writing off on their taxes, like if they made money or not. It's just something I believe in, and I'll always keep doing it until I lose faith in it. So the good thing about Wikipedia is you can read it on your phone. So I'm going to do some summarizing in a second after I read this article. And the number one reason I think my poetry business is not successful is marketing is so expensive. And if you want to do marketing right, 3.22 kilometers. It's hard to get people to know you exist. That's the problem. There's all these other big books. No one wants to buy the smaller series. They just want the big, like Harry Potters and Christopher Paolinis of the world. And especially with the genre I'm working with, it makes it even harder. Okay, word for word from Wikipedia. This is about the first article, the first part of the article. The Russian Revolution was a period of political and social revolution across the territory of the Russian Empire, commencing with the abolition of the monarchy in 1917 and concluding in 1923 with the Bolshevik establishment of the Soviet Union at the end of the Civil War. So this Soviet Union, it lasted almost the entirety of the 20th century. Well, a big portion of it. Like, this was what my parents told me about, like how there was this Berlin Wall when one half of the country was communist, the other half was free in Berlin. It's like an occupied zone, separated families for a long period of time. And you had Ronald Reagan saying, tear down this wall. And there was also an extreme, from what I know about this, there was an extreme persecution of the Russian Orthodox Church and other religious groups during this time. Even though the Russian Orthodox Church was a majority religion, it was still persecuted because communism, if you look at Karl Marx's philosophy, it's atheistic in nature. So apparently what I'm reading here is the whole turn of events in Russia started in the year 1917, around that year, during the First World War, with this event called the February Revolution. And this revolution took place near the capital city of Petrograd, which is now labeled by the world as St. Petersburg. Okay, and I'm reading right here, the revolution erupted in the context of Russia's major military losses during the war, which resulted in much of the Russian army being ready to mutiny. And mutiny is just a fancy word for commit treason. And apparently this caused a lot of chaos, which caused members of the Russian parliament to assume control of the country, forming the Russian Provisional Government. And I think that's all I'm going to read for today. As we learn more, I will look at other sources besides Wikipedia, but I think Wikipedia is a good starting point. But if you're going to be academic at all, you got to read other sources. There are lots of citations and footnotes in Wikipedia, which is why it's a good starting point, because you can read the sources, and the sources are usually less biased and more inclusive than everything else. So what happened was the communists, they took advantage of a crisis that was happening in Russia. People were tired out because of the First World War. They blamed the Tsar for it. And eventually, I believe, if I might recall correctly, the Tsar of Russia was executed along with his family by the Bolsheviks. So you can check me if I'm saying anything wrong in the description of this video. But I'm mostly working with Wikipedia until I get some official primary sources or better sources or sources that anyone can't just edit. And I wonder how popular on YouTube just rambling about random topics is. I think it's very interesting that this is a journey that I'm going on. That should get a lot of people interested, how it's like progressing over each video. I've gone further distance, so it's like the percentage goes up and they can watch that unfold. That is something very interesting to me. There are so many skills I need to learn. For example, even my language skills like Spanish, I can't speak Spanish at all. I can read some of it, but I'm not skilled in just coming up with random sentences in Spanish. If I was, I'd probably be fluent, but I can't do that for some reason. It takes so long to learn a language. Like, I also would like to learn Afrikaans, because that would be interesting to learn. Useful maybe eventually. Zulu is way too hard though. But what else could I learn? Arabic is too hard. I looked into that one time. I learned the alphabet but then forgot it like a week later because I didn't hammer down on that. So the thing is, when you're studying something, you gotta really commit to it. You can't just throw in like a week's worth of work and expect to pass. Like, you gotta put all your effort into it. So yeah, I want to study everything. Like, there's so much knowledge. Like, you don't even need a book to get books to study. You can just learn from the internet and memorize stuff and study stuff and get that knowledge out there. Because knowledge, when it stays out on a page, or on some web page and no one's reading it, it doesn't do anyone any good. You gotta actually educate yourself and inhale that knowledge and apply it. Yeah, a bad habit I have is just listening to a bunch of music, walking around and listening to music on my walks. But like it would also feed my brain a little bit if I listen to podcasts or listen to audiobooks or even read some ebooks or something. His books are a very, very good way to learn. I think people have really undervalued the value of what words can do, especially written words on a page. I don't know if there's any science on if people learn better when reading an ebook versus a printed book, but there's probably no difference. But there's something very romantic about reading books on a page, and probably I'd say helps you learn better, but I don't know. What I mean by that is retain information more easily. And in case anyone doesn't know already, by reading like True Daughter of the Soil or Harmony, I'm not a fan of communism at all, or even like any kind of authoritarian regime or government. Like, I think the idea, personally for me, I think the less government control on something is usually better. Rules tend to, like rules where you don't need rules, make things less fun and less able to live your life to the fullest extent. What the government needs to do needs to protect people from extreme crimes like murder or theft or invasions from another country. That's the main role of government, I think. Why the police force is so important in any country. It's because people who just want to be left alone and live their life should be able to do that, I think. And communism is always extreme in its control. Just look at any country that implements it, even China. Like when I was working with these Chinese kids from, not kids, they were adults, these Chinese guys from grad school, they would, I'd say, do you have any problem with the Chinese government? And they're like, why would you ask this question? Like, they were like, no, I support it fully. I'm 100% red. I'm 100% communist. And they're like, the only party allowed in China is a communist party. So like this organization, this set of ideologies really needs to go to the trash bin of history, needs to go away, and it's not done anyone really any good. And like people say, oh like communism, you're only looking at it in the states it failed and it's never been implemented anywhere. And I'm like, bingo. Like, the reason it hasn't been implemented correctly in any of the states that have attempted it is because it doesn't work. Because people need incentives to have their own property. Property is inherently a good thing. Like, anything can be abused, but it's just that revolutionary idea that everyone else's stuff belongs to everyone, and seizing the means of production. It's just, you just look at the history. And there's no such thing as a peaceful communist country, because to get to that communist level, you have to have a revolution, and you have to take things from people that they have no business taking. Because you think if you just gonna draft a law saying we're now communists, you think the wealthy or whoever you think are wealthy are just gonna give up their stuff. And what it really does is it makes everyone poor, because do you know how much money everyone would have if all the wealth in the world were distributed evenly? $30,000. Each person would have that much. And to that I say, just good luck with that. Like, if that's your ideology, I just cannot. I actually had some people on Facebook arguing, telling me that communism is the ideology they would prefer. Not socialism, but communism. Like, It's like you can teach, if you say something long enough, you can get people to start believing in it. And it's just not something we want the world to be. We want to be moving away from communism and fascism, which are really two sides of the same coin. They're both leftist extremist ideologies, and just move away from that. I'm not even talking about like the Democratic Party or anything, or any kind of American left-wing ideology. I'm talking about actual communism. And I don't think very many people would support that, because people tend not to be extremists. They tend to be moderate more often than not. When you talk to anyone, they'll be like, what do you think about this? No, they tend to shy away from extremism. Extremism of any form, I hate to break it to you, but it's bad. It's not good. If you're an extremist, you're on the wrong side of whatever position you want to be holding. The true position is usually somewhere in the middle. There's a balance there. So I searched the Spotify for podcasts on the Russian Revolution, or for example the communist Bolshevik Revolution, and the only thing that came up was these two kids like doing a history project, which sounds like they're high school, in a very unprofessional setting. It's helpful, but it's very like disappointing that that's all I could find. Yeah, and another thing that I absolutely abhor is censorship, because that's how you get locked into bad ideas. And with, for example, hate speech laws, when you have laws in like Canada or something, or another country, that they decide to enact laws restricting speech for whatever reason, it's just the next guy who comes into power can shift or evolve the definition of hate speech to include whatever speech they don't like. So it's always evolving. My political views, for example, they've always stayed the same. They haven't changed. It's like when you are always evolving your views, there's something wrong. There's a problem there. Because then you never know what's going to happen next. Like what next that political party or anything else will turn into. Just so we're clear, with the Russian Revolution, there are two revolutions. The February Revolution, which overthrew the Tsar, and then there is the Bolshevik part of that revolution, which overthrew the provisional government and gave the Soviets control of the country. What I should do next is I should study the French Revolution and the American Revolution, compare all three revolutions, and then do a video where I compare the differences. That'd be a smart idea. I mean, a good idea, fun idea, actually. Informative to people, I think. So that's where I'm going to end this video today. Hopefully you can look out for a new video tomorrow. And everyone have a good and safe time for the rest of your night. And hopefully everything will be fine. Oh, and please subscribe if you want to. So thanks.